Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Edge. I am Carlotta, PR Manager at Disclosure, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by Megan. So thank you very much, Megan, for being here today.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
So in this episode, we'll dive into your perspective on the ever-changing world of career and workspace journalism, where it's headed, how it's evolving, what that means for PR professionals and journalists alike. So let's jump right in with our first question, if you're ready.
Of course. Yeah.
Okay, so from your perspective, how is the future of journalism evolving? I mean, with the rise of AI tools, shifting reader habits, and what skills do you think journalists will need most to stay relevant?
I guess I'll first flag that I am an independent journalist and I work for myself on a freelance basis. So I guess I can't see inside newsrooms, but this is kind of my take from the outside, as it were. So obviously the future's shifting at an insane speed, which is both fascinating but also quite daunting to be watching. But I guess, it's not just journalism. There are, some challenges that are unique to the sector, but with Gen AI and it trickling into most aspects of our lives right now, it's changed the landscape for so many different types of workers, both in kind of the mood of the workplace as well as the concrete changes to how we work and what we're actually asked to do. I think I've seen, Gen AI being used for, news gathering, research, even drafting, news pieces and articles. But with that comes some real complexities around editorial ethics, transparency, misinformation, those sorts of things. And actually, even for those not actively using AI, there are ripple effects, there are checks and balances being put in to ensure that, the human contributors are not AI generated. And it was only, I think, last week where I pitched a piece to a new editor that I hadn't worked with before at a large publication. And I was asked to jump on a call and actually show my passport to the editor. And we had a nice chat afterwards and we kind of laughed about it. But that's the sorts of things that are being put in place to ensure that contributors are human. So
So the
really,
passport for confirming that you were human.
yes, because if you were to do a call with an AI generated persona, they'd be able to answer questions, but they
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to respond like, oh, wait, sorry, let me just go get my passport
Yeah,
and show you
sure.
that. So it does feel like a really fascinating time. And I think my thought is that, journalists have forever been overworked and underpaid. So I don't blame anyone for wanting to use kind of AI in their work. But it does feel like we're at a moment where we're kind of joyriding or maybe this is what smoking felt like when they
Yeah.
didn't know the health risks. I can't pretend to know how this is going to shake out. But I think one thing that I'm really happy to see play out is the rise of, paid subscriptions and direct to reader products like from really, really esteemed journalists, newsletters
Yeah.
specifically. I guess we sort of know Substack's a huge player, but there's also another one called Beehive. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yeah.
And yeah, just today I saw that The Nerve, which is a new publication led by Carol Cadwallader and four other ex Observer journalists, they hit nearly 1,000 subscribers on their
Wow.
first launch, which is, a record for Beehive, but
Yeah.
also shows the direction this might go. And there's loads of incredible journalism and investigations being produced by teams of maybe one or two people,
Yes.
and which are all kind of ipso regulated. So they're very much scrutinized in the same way as newspapers and magazines. There's a couple in the UK. I don't know if this is relevant to mention, but I thought I'd flag there's one
Yeah.
called The Lead, which reports on politics and culture in the UK, and then Jim Waterson's London Centric, which has broken some huge stories mega that
Okay.
have been picked up by national newspapers in the UK. So to see that happen and the trickle up effect of those
Yeah.
newsletters is giving me hope and making me feel that journalism's always changing. It's never not been changing, honestly. And at a time when we've got the far right gaining greater footholds in so many countries, it's so important to have those sources of information to hold power to account and cut through all the misinformation. So I think we are going to see more of those. The second part to your question, sorry, this is a long answer.
Yeah, no.
It's a big,
That's actually very interesting. You just made me think about how newsletters are also very important, resourceful for journalists and for PR, because I think, tell me if it's correct, I think you have more possibilities for your pitch to be accepted and to be worked on, because I mean the journalist is free to decide which kind of topic to work on and everything. Is that correct?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And, there'll be an overarching mission, with the newsletter, but they don't necessarily have slots to fill in the same
Exactly.
way that a news website or a newspaper would. So, they can break their publishing cycle and say, look, actually, we wanted to bring you this in the middle of the night on a Tuesday because we
Yeah,
can and we think it's important and we wanted to beat the newspapers.
yeah,
So, yeah, I think there's a lot of promise there for PRs to be seeking out those newsletters with both high readership, of course, that's
yes,
important, have eyes on it, but also the ones that have that kind of editorial robustness that maybe some clients are looking for.
yes,
If you have an IPSO regulated newsletter and you're featured in that as a thought leader or a spokesperson or an expert, you know, that's huge credibility. So
yes.
yeah, it's definitely something to consider.
Okay. So moving
You
to this, yeah, sorry, you were saying
you
something.
did ask about the skills to
Yes, I
stay
mean,
relevant.
I was asking, since you've written extensively about work, career, and business, what challenges do you see, and what opportunities also in covering workplace-related topics compared, for example, to other industries?
Yeah, I think so. We had the pandemic, which I
Yeah,
think brought workplace issues up into the consciousness of many people. A lot of people to have a shift as large as, well, everyone or most people now can work from home,
yeah,
and all of the weirdness that sort of span out from that. I have been happy to see that workplace issues are really, they've climbed up the
yeah.
priority list, but equally we've got challenges around reduction in the publications willing to fund and support big investigations or just big stories, and a sizing down on sort of workplace related content. So that's a risk for all sectors. But then an opportunity, I suppose, in the last couple of years has been around how workplace topics are really actually hugely political and divisive things. They're even right leaning and left leaning now, depending on, what you think about where people should work or,
Yes,
that sort of thing. So, yeah, there's issues like crackdowns on DEI or these return to office mandates. So that's made conversation and reporting around these topics like really important and quite a spicy topic for newsrooms to be focusing on. Um, I've been really pleased to see, for example, several newspapers and news outlets actually employ an employment correspondent,
okay,
whose role it is within the organization to be reporting on these sorts of topics. And once upon a time there were labor reporters. Every
yes,
newspaper would have a labor reporter reporting on strikes and all that kind of thing. But I suppose with sort of worker actions perhaps less active, certainly in the UK, those have disappeared. So I think it's both a sort of contraction, but also maybe an expansion in the sense that there's
yes.
appetite. Readers want to know what's happening in a certain world and how it might affect them. So
And also maybe
again,
young people who are approaching the job world.
yeah, no, that's so true. Like, kind of learning about what sort of world they're
Yeah,
entering into.
exactly.
Um, yeah.
So in recent months, we've seen many outlets shut down or drastically reduce their staff. What impact do you think that the quality and diversity of reporting has, particularly in business and career journalism?
Yeah, it definitely has felt like something of an Armageddon kind of moment
Yeah,
for many publications. Digital Frontier and The Next Web are just two that
yes,
closed over the summer. and, you know, Reach PLC, there's still decisions around that. That's a huge employer, you know, in the UK. I think we're seeing kind of revenue models really being scuppered by those AI search mechanisms. Again, I don't know how that's going to shake out, but in the short term, those reductions in staff and closure of entire publications is, of course, a huge loss, and it does make the job of PR much more difficult. But my hope is that some of the more hybrid entities, like newsrooms that kind of combine like commercial and philanthropic funding, and those decentralized like journalist first outlets will come in to fill that void when it comes to reporting on specifically workers' rights, which is underreported always, I would say. I hope in the long term we'll see kind of more new entities grow and thrive, you know, because those journalists are out of their full-time jobs. You know, that newsletter I mentioned earlier, The Nerve, they started that publication with their redundancy payouts. So I just think, you know, journalists don't, you know, when they're not employed and they want to stay in the sector, they'll find a way. It just might be scrappy and difficult. And I think, there are some huge positives to take in, for example, the evolution of local news journalism, which has had a kind of rough, rocky road for so many years. And now we're starting to see some publications like The Mill in the UK, and then there's another one called Zetland in Denmark. And they've got small teams as well, but they're producing really focused content. It's quite tech forward, the way they work, while some of the legacy players just don't have that agility. So I think it's having an impact, absolutely. But my hope is that quality reporting and the need and desire for quality reporting doesn't disappear, particularly, as we mentioned, with young people entering the workplace that they're not 100%, you know, perhaps sure of, and they're often the ones calling the shots, I would say, or forcing businesses to change the way they work. So I don't think the appetite's going to go, even if the legacy players are sort of under threat or at risk right now.
Okay, very, very interesting. And so PR and journalism are often described as having a complex relationship, or maybe sometimes difficult. So how do you see the role of PR evolving, and what makes for a truly valuable collaboration between PRs and journalists?
So I think I guess I'll say that I couldn't do my job without good relationships with PRs. I think their job, like ours, has got a lot harder. I think especially when it comes to operating at speed and operating, you know, as curators of AI generated content, you know, I think it's that need for kind of verified information and true, real storytelling with a lot of depth and narrative is going to matter a lot more. Like, you know, kind of shallow or sort of launch announcements are perhaps less exciting. There's less space for those. Instead, those sort of deep, honest stories that I think particularly showing up in the kind of the business world, the corporate world, you know, being open about failures. I think those are stories that people want to read, even if it's a bit of a battle with a client. To be honest about those things, I think it's really...
I know something about that.
Yeah, I'm sure you do, just the back and forth.
Exactly.
But I think some of the best PRs I've worked with have been journalists in past lives. And I think, you know, I'm not suggesting that redundancies mean that the PR industry is going to gain journalists, but that is often a career path. And so I think working out how journalists are working now, which honestly is changing, it feels every couple of months.
Yes, exactly.
That's a priority for PRs so that they can really strengthen that kind of collaboration, because it is a collaboration. And I think as much as you kind of read the slightly negative things on LinkedIn that journalists will post about, this PR sent me this and this is why I'm
Yeah,
so
you
unhappy.
shouldn't do that.
Honestly,
Don't do that. Yeah.
yeah, like you don't hear about the amazing examples of journalists kind of being there, being a support in stories and acting fast and acting with integrity and honesty, all of which I guess we need more of.
Yeah.
So yeah, bringing back that, I found actually it's been really nice to meet in person with
Yes.
PRs and develop relationships in that way. Even like a catch up call just is so much more effective than
Yes.
a million emails back and forth.
Yeah.
So I think, the collaboration between PR professionals and journalists isn't going anywhere. I think in a way there's some maybe solidarity or common ground to be felt in that like our jobs are changing really fast
Yes.
and we need to upskill and kind of retool so that our collaboration and what we are both aiming to do in our separate lanes is aligned, and there's that sort of shared goal of telling great
Exactly.
stories and getting them out into
Exactly.
the world. If
Yeah.
I don't know if any of that resonates with you.
Yeah, everything actually, and I
Okay.
completely agree, especially on the part where you said that the best PRs professional are ex-journalists or still are journalists, because I think that you really, you really need to think as the audience. So what I'm gonna have, what's the really important thing for the people who will read this article, this piece, or will hear this interview, because that's what the journalist, has in mind. So you really need to do, let me say, a public service and tell the people a great story, an interesting story, interesting data, anything that you may be in possess of. But I definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I also think like possibly playing more of a long game in the sense that yeah, these new launches and kinds that sort of thing don't often interest me as a journalist, but like sometimes it's the zooming out that a PR professional is able to do and tell a story in the context of the sector it's trying to enter or the magnitude of what it's trying to do, those
Yeah,
sorts of things. Yeah, the stories that kind of grow over time and can be added to as well are interesting.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
sorry, that was just a little thought to add on
Yeah, no,
there.
no, no, definitely. No, no, please feel free to add anything you like. So we have come to the last question. And given the uncertainty and transformation in the media landscape, what advice would you give to young journalists who want to build a career in this field today?
Well, I suppose I do, as from time to time, I do talks at careers events for sort of young people, and it is really difficult to give them advice that I feel is true to this moment. But I think my advice would be to stay AI resistant while also embracing AI is a huge challenge, again, for like all workers,
Yeah,
but really investing in the skills that only you can do. Things like interviewing and investigative work, like getting out into the world, finding the stories that need to be told is something that AI simply
cannot
cannot
do.
do.
Yeah,
And hopefully, I
yeah,
don't think it will ever
that's
be able to
yeah,
do.
that's the hope. Yeah,
Yeah. So really like bolstering your contacts book, like spending time gaining the trust of sources and treating those sources with the utmost care, particularly in sensitive environments.
yeah,
All those skills are so valuable. I think we're kind of entering the age of the journalist influencer.
yes,
So being a journalist who knows how every story will translate into social, vertical video, not just single format, I think young journalists probably now are like, well, yeah, obviously, duh. But I think that's an important point to note. Even if you're a journalist who wants to upskill, those are the areas I'm sure. I think you know, I think honesty is important from I'm maybe 8 years into being a journalist, and there have been very few years where my whole income has come from journalism. So I think being open to the idea that you are a polymath you
Yeah.
need to be a polymath, and you also need to diversify your income because most journalists I know, certainly the freelance ones, are doing work in other
Yeah.
fields to support their work, and that's
Yes.
kind of a truth. Normal, it's a truth that we need to be willing to accept. It's something I
Yes.
do, but there are ways to make it work for you. Like, do work that gets you into the world, gets you speaking to people, understanding how the world is changing. All of that is so valuable.
Yeah.
I think also, like, read, like really like immerse yourself in the kinds of things you want to be producing, whether that's actually the written word or video, documentaries, and
Yes.
then think about why that piece or publication has worked so well, so you can understand, the scaffolding behind that thing, to help you pitch and create work that you could be really proud of. Yeah, we're definitely, I don't know if you've started to read about this or see this, entering this deluge of like AI slop,
Okay.
which is, yeah, I'm starting to see it certainly in maybe sort of like marketing, advertising worlds. So if you as a journalist can cut through that, I know, that's a real skill. And I know a lot of publications are after those really quick, incisive explainers. So being that source of truth and information. Yeah, I think we're probably all doing ourselves a disservice by saying like, no, I'm not going to touch generative AI.
Yeah.
But, and maybe it feels like making a deal with the devil, but you have to know what you're up against,
Yeah.
what it's good at, what it's bad at, because it's like that AI literacy, not the AI reliance. And with that, your verification skills and fact checking skills are even more important. Same
Yes.
to a degree with PR professionals here.
Yes. Same.
But I think I really want to underscore to anyone considering a move into journalism is it's mad, it's wonderful, like it is an amazing field to work in. I cannot recommend it enough. You have to be really resilient, of
Yes.
course, but it's worth all of that struggle. To be trusted with other people's stories is really such a privilege. So I say do it, do it, do it, do it.
Megan, I completely agree, and I mean that's been very insightful and inspiring also for me, and I hope for a lot of people. So thank you.
Oh, oh no, thank you so much. It's been so nice to chat, Carlotta.